World War, the United States and the Soviet Union became embroiled in an undeclared war in which the United States fought vehemently with the goal of containing the spread of communism globally. This was known as the Cold War. During this era of political hostility between the two world powers, the policy of containment was epitomized by the Vietnam War, which was unofficially declared in 1964 under President Johnson. The war effort escalated greatly during Johnson's term, despite the public's growing disillusionment that American sacrifices in the violent war were necessary to achieve Cold War goals. After President Nixon took office in 1968, he pursued a policy of Vietnamization, which constituted a gradual but not immediate removal of American troops from Vietnam. He justified this action by saying he appealed to the silent majority of America, those who supported the war effort but did not voice their opinions publicly. However, the rise of a counterculture which was exemplified by hippies and doves who congregated around the idea of peace, as well as a growing number of political activist groups, such as the FTA, who publicly denounced the war effort, illustrated the looming prevalence of anti-war sentiment. The student riots at Jackson and Kent State Universities, where protesting students were killed by the National Guard, further demonstrated public unrest. Due to public dissatisfaction, veterans were often undeservedly disrespected.
We weren't well liked. People were spitting on us, and not me, it never happened to me, but it did happen. And calling us murderers, calling us, whatever you want to, you know what I mean? And again, we're just young guys. We're doing what the government told us to do. You have to do what you're told to do.
They just shit my little butt right there.
Jane Fonda was a movie star who was brought into politics when she married Tom Hayden, a political activist. During the Vietnam War, she spoke out against U.S. involvement and made speeches at a number of universities. In 1972, Fonda created a lasting legacy of controversy when she flew to Hanoi, North Vietnam to continue her anti-war activism. Fonda spent 2 weeks touring Vietnam, giving broadcasts on Radio Hanoi and interviewing U.S. prisoners of war. Although Jane Fonda's anti-war stance reflected many Americans' sentiments towards the war, her radical actions offended many Americans who believed that by willingly traveling to enemy territory to make a political statement, she denounced American soldiers and insulted the war effort.
She didn't really know a lot, and so part of what she wanted to do is to educate herself and become more knowledgeable about some of the issues that she felt very passionate about so that she could defend them. She wanted the war to stop. She thought the war was wrong. She, along with millions of other people, believed that, but she, again, took it to an extreme. She was more radical in her politics.
Like many other activists, Fonda was concerned with American involvement in a foreign country. While in Vietnam, Fonda was captured in a photograph sitting amiably on a North Vietnamese tank.
She's looking through the rangefinder of a 37mm anti-aircraft gun at, thankfully, a non-existent American aircraft.
Many reacted strongly to this picture because the tank would later be used to kill American soldiers. This iconic photograph was used as propaganda and proof that Jane Fonda was a traitor.
Images really started to matter. Iconic images like the ones that they snapped of her becomes a way to make a broader statement. So people rely on these images to speak so much. And so when you can get some of those very powerful images, it really can undermine the public opinion.
However, Henry Holzer, author of Aid and Comfort, Jane Fonda in North Vietnam, starkly disagrees.
I think the media underplayed her actions. In the middle of the war, she goes to Hanoi, not even openly, by the way, surreptitiously and clandestinely. And she makes these, 8 radio broadcasts, which are played not only over and over in South and North Vietnam, but internationally.
Vietnam veterans Mr. Bill Paneff, Mr. Dennis O'Rourke, and Mr. Jerry DeTietro reflect on Fonda's actions.
I don't like her.
Well, she kind of stuck her nose out in places where...
I don't think she belonged, you know what I mean? And it doesn't...
She was trying to be a peacemaker, you know, but it wasn't her place. Right. Well, she kind of like going on over on their side, making us look wrong. Yeah. See, she kind of denounced, oh, you guys are wrong doing this. Well,
What she tried to do was use her political influence as a star of the daughter of a very famous actor to try to make a point about the war, okay? Now, we can all agree that the war was a waste,
It wasn't.
Okay.
It was a moneymaker.
The way she went about it was wrong. If they wanted to do something to make people more aware about the war at that point in time, they picked the wrong avenue by going to Hanoi. She pissed on the people that were fighting the war. Mm-hmm. She wants to make political statements. Let her get into a political ring and do it. To go to the enemy, right?
Yeah.
I got a real problem with that.
Yeah.
Real problem with that.
Yeah, makes sense.
And don't tell me it's for the good of the country that she did. She didn't save any lives.
Yeah.
She didn't shorten the war. She just made it worse.
Some people genuinely believe Fonda was a pawn of the North Vietnamese and that her actions were a result of her unawareness of their manipulation.
The North Vietnamese saw an opportunity to exploit her travels and to set her up, have that very iconic picture that's taken of her that people point to and say that this is why she's a traitor to the United States. The North Vietnamese were actually very aware that they wanted to have this opportunity and to use her to undermine support for the war.
Meanwhile, Holzer gives another perspective.
Of course she was manipulated, but she was willingly manipulated. She gave them everything they wanted and then some. If she was a victim, it's to imply that she's somehow innocent, didn't know what she was doing. It's absurd. She knew very well what she was doing. And that was made even clearer by the broadcasts, and those were made even clearer when she came back.
Fonda eventually did express regret for her actions many years after visiting Hanoi.
I made one unforgivable mistake when I was in North Vietnam, and I will go to my grave with this. I don't know if I was set up or not. I was an adult. I take responsibility for my actions, and there were pictures taken. And as I walked away, I suddenly thought, oh my gosh, this is going to look like I was shooting. This is an image that belied everything that I was.
However, there are still people who believe she did not ever sincerely apologize.
She persisted. There was never an apology. There was never an understanding. There has never been an understanding of what she did.
According to Holzer, there was enough evidence to indict her for treason. The Constitution defines treason against the United States as levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. Though there is debate about whether Fonda's actions constitute treason, she has not suffered any legal repercussions after coming back from Vietnam.
Make in my view, a conclusive case that it constituted the constitutional crime of treason. And it's a shame and a sin that she was never indicted and tried. You understand treason to mean giving aid and comfort to the enemy. Just ask the North Vietnamese. They were about to throw in the towel because of the bombing. And her trip and the trip of others strengthened the anti-war movement here, which in turn undermined the government's strength to pursue and to prolong the war. But there's no question, because we have the North Vietnamese own words for it, that it strengthened their resolve.
Though Jane Fonda represented the widely voiced public opinion in her anti-war stance, her method of delivery came across as brash and did not effectively accomplish her goal of shortening the war. The volatile nature of Fonda's excursion to Hanoi indeed demonstrated and intensified the stark rifts in American society, which were a result of the nation's questionable purpose in entering the brutal Vietnam War.
I believe that the people who are speaking out against the war, be they Republicans or Democrats, are patriots.
On a broader scale, the continued discussion over the motives and appropriateness of Fonda's actions illustrates society's perpetual debate over the interpretation of patriotism.